Good afternoon. It's once again 5:30 on a Friday afternoon. And this is your host, Congressman Davis, for the next 25 minutes of Hotline 21, the most interactive television in the United States of America, where you, the viewer, really becomes the program and the programmer. And so you have an opportunity to talk about anything that's on your mind, anything on your chest. I tell you, there are a lot of things going on in the United States of America. And we are perplexed. We are saddened. We aren't sure of what to do. We're uncertain about it. We have experienced in the last few days some of the most horrific violence known to humankind in the United States of America. In terms of law enforcement personnel carrying out what some would call their duties and responsibilities, and then this terrible attack on law enforcement in Dallas, Texas. And there are people who aren't sure of what they think, what they feel. Well, the reality is that there is trouble in America. But there has always been trouble in America. There has always been a right side and a wrong side, a good side and a bad side. And so it depends on how you look at things. There are some who would say that lynching has just moved to another level. And you know, this has caused me to go back and read up a little bit and check out the history. And some people would say that it's a different kind of lynching when law enforcement people become the police, the judge, the jury, and the executioner all at the same time. My heart goes out to the families of the police officers who were murdered in Dallas, Texas. But my heart also goes out to the families of the brothers who were murdered, killed in Minneapolis, outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I can imagine what it probably would have been like in Baton Rouge had school not been out, if there were a bunch of college students on campus. And last night, you know, there were protests all around the country. As we were finishing up our last vote last night in Washington in the House of Representatives, we heard that there were a group of protesters on their way to the Capitol. And when we finished voting, many of us went out and met them. Some folks would say met with them. No, we went out and met them and joined with them and joined the protests and marched with them in a show of unity, a show of disdain, a show of recognizing that black lives do matter, and a show of continuing the fight to rid ourselves of oppressive law enforcement tactics that some of us have been fighting for a long time. I don't know how it affected you, but it certainly does and did affect me. And I had a delightful, refreshing time walking in the crowd with young people, just talking. And they weren't young people that I knew. They weren't young people who knew me. Few of them did recognize that I was a member of Congress. But as we walked and talked, and they expressed their feelings, one young person said to me, you know, there's a big disconnect between us and y'all, meaning those of us who might be a little older than some of them. And I tried to find out what the disconnect was. And after saying that I probably was there for the same reason that he was, that we were looking for the same things, that we were looking for justice, a feeling of equal protection under the law, a sense of equal opportunity to be recognized as a full-fledged citizen of these United States of America that we had just finished celebrating the 4th of July. And even as I celebrated the 4th of July, I couldn't help but be mindful of Frederick Douglass's speech that he gave and some of the things that he said. But I guess in the end, if there is righteousness in the heart, there's beauty in the character. If people of goodwill try and find a common ground, oftentimes that ground would be found. I put out a statement relative to the senseless killings that we've experienced in these last 3 days. And I ended it saying one thing, that there are some things that we don't know about what's generating all of the violence, all of the strife, all of the hate, all of the misconceptualization, all of the misunderstanding. But there is one thing that I do know. I know that if one does not have a gun, he or she cannot shoot. And if one does not have a semi-automatic or automatic weapon, they cannot shoot a whole bunch of people at the same time. So no matter what else we're talking about, we need to be talking about getting these semi-automatic and automatic weapons out of the hands of people who should not have them. And as far as I'm concerned, the only people who should have them are military personnel, are individuals sometimes in some form of law enforcement. I can't think of any reason anybody else should be walking around with access to a semi-automatic or automatic weapon. That's just Danny Davis's feeling. Of course, you can give us a call at 312-738-1060, and we are delighted to entertain your conversation. So, caller, are you there? All right.
Good evening, Dr. Davis.
Yes, how are you?
District. I am taking a middle of the road opinion on what is happening. And you asking what is fanning some of the problems and what's going on right now. And as I look at social media, Facebook and Twitter, and guess what? They are fanning part of the problem. And when people are going on there and they are posting that I'm going to kill 100 police officers, and you got Facebook and Twitter not doing anything about that at all, and we got people that's walking around our part of our society that don't have both oils in the water, if you know what I mean, and we have a whole lot of mental illness going on. And then when they sit back and they want to blame, like we look at some of these people, they want to blame the federal government about police department, but excuse me, police department is something that's state and local. The federal government can make recommendations and they can provide certain type of resources, but guess what? When it comes in terms of policy, that is something the state and local government have to deal with.
But people were people before they became police.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. People are people, no matter what profession they go into.
I agree with you there. And maybe I quote a little bit of Dr. King, all right? Maybe I don't have the quote down patent, right? You cannot fight darkness with darkness. You can only fight it with light. And you cannot fight hate with hate. You got to fight it with love. And my daughter was telling me recently, she passed the test for Chicago Police Department, and she's telling me she wanted to be a police officer. Like most parents, I said, no, I don't want you to be no police officer because it ain't a good thing today. And I said to her, one of my commitments is I'm not going to bury you. You're going to bury me. And that's what a lot of family members are doing these days when they son or daughter say they want to be a police officer these days, because they are scared. Because when you have these people with these weapons and they sit back and they can plan how that was an execution. You know, I listened to certain things. That was an execution. It was planned.
But there are so many people. I don't want to, but people can't sit on their porch. So you don't have to be a police officer to be endangered. You can't drive your car on the expressway.
I was listening what former police superintendent Gary McCarthy was saying today. A lot of these problems, it's been going on a long time. You cannot necessarily say it's a police problem. It's a health problem. It's an educational problem. It's an employment problem. And all these things factor into some of the problems.
I guess we've got a little bit of a technical problem for a minute. But go ahead. Did anything happen? Well, whatever the technical glitch may have been, we'll just continue. I don't think there's any way to solve this problem except to seek justice, to love mercy, and to be human. You know, I'm a reader. I read a great deal. I'm also what I call a history buff, especially reading about the history of my country and more directly the history of my people. And when I read the history of America, the United States of America, and I see how many black people, for example, were lynched under the guise of some kind of law, that this was supposed to have been somebody's depiction of justice. And even as we look at our judiciary, we look at our court system, oftentimes when you go to court, you will see just J-U-S-T, us. Now, there is something wrong with that. And I'm not casting aspersions. I'm saying, and I don't make excuses in terms of saying that, yeah, individuals didn't learn this and didn't learn that. And all of that is true. That's why we must have the most effective education that we can have. That's why I am having something called Chicago State University Day on August the 7th in the 7th Congressional District, where we will be promoting Chicago State University in the churches and other places all day long that day. And of course it will start before then, because August the 8th is registration, and so individuals need to have made up their mind about where they want to go and what they want to do. But Chicago State is the only predominantly black 4-year college or university and upwards in the state of Illinois. We talk about historically black colleges and universities and the value that they play in terms of having a level of understanding related to the needs of African American students that can be different. And I've actually taught at several different colleges and universities. I actually taught for 10 years at one very outstanding university, Benedictine University. I taught 2 courses out in DuPage County. I've taught at the University of Illinois. I've taught at the City Colleges of Chicago. I've taught at Roosevelt University. And in the graduate school. All of these things are relevant, but there are many African American students who can benefit from a college like Chicago State, because they may have some needs that can be addressed in a different way that might not get addressed at one of the other institutions. And so when people ask me why I'm promoting Chicago State University, that is part of the reason. The other part is I have an affinity for the institution because I did get a master's degree there, and I didn't have to pay as much as I would have had to pay someplace else, and I paid for every penny of it, every dime. No scholarship, no nothing, no loan, no nothing, cash money. My wife got her undergraduate degree there, so we both had some personal relationship. I always joke with her because she got her master's degree at Roosevelt, where the tuition was a little different, and I say she could afford it when I couldn't. But Great institution. People need to go. Let me make another point. Trying to deal with the question of black men and black boys, the church that I attend more regularly than I do hardly any other church, because I'm a member of that church, but I go to a lot of churches. On Sunday, July the 17th, the men of New Galilee at 43135 North Laramie are having something called 100 Men in Black program. And it's going to be at 4 o'clock. Of course, they're asking men to dress in black. I'm going, so I'm going to dress in black. I got something that's black. And of course, this is put on by one of the deacons, Deacon Andrew Washington. And the idea is to have men come and bring young men with them, boys, or somebody that they might be mentoring. Because there are some things that some of our African American males are missing as they are growing up, that hopefully they can experience through interaction with other men. On tomorrow, I'm going to be with Commissioner Richard Boykin, who is going to be trying to get a closer and a greater understanding of this violence that we are experiencing. You know, in Chicago, we celebrated almost the fact that only 4 people were killed during the 4th of July holiday, but I understand 40 were shot. And we've been hearing that this was a great success based upon a strategy that the Chicago Police Department used of locking up about 88 individuals that they say they know are known gangbangers and shooters, and that's one of the reasons that the murder rate during that weekend may have been down, or that there wasn't as much shooting. But I know that we've got to do something. We've been trying our best in Congress. We are a regulatory entity to some degree. And of course, some of us have been trying to get laws passed that would take some of the guns off the streets just by making them unavailable, and by saying that certain kind of people just can't have them, that there is no reason that one needs a gun that can shoot 50 times in 50 seconds. I mean, that is a level of insanity in our country that need not exist. What do you need a gun that shoot all of these times for? It's like the song that used to be about war. And what did they say? War. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. These guns are good to kill people. Nothing else. Nobody should not have them. If you're not in law enforcement, you're not in the military. So we're getting back in the groove. Hopefully I'll be here again next Friday, because we're supposed to go on recess. So have your thoughts, ideas, and all of those things ready, because I look forward to seeing you next week when I will be listening to the people. Have a good week.